The space was filled with flashes as the Millennium Falcon weaved between debris and TIE fighters determined to hunt them down. Han Solo, in his unmistakable style, glanced quickly at Chewbacca, who roared in disapproval and fired up the thrusters with daring maneuvers. The communicator beeped, and Leia appeared in a hologram, her face firm but tender. Han, smirking, spoke in that mocking tone of his. "Relax, princess. I'll be back in time for dinner. Just need to shake off a few remnants of the Empire." Leia rolled her eyes before the transmission cut, leaving the cockpit lit only by the flashing alarms. The chase intensified. Two TIEs dove in sync, firing green bolts that ricocheted off the Falcon's shields. Han, as always, seemed to be enjoying himself, pulling sharp turns that forced Chewie to cling to the secondary controls. The Wookiee's roar was half warning, half protest, but Solo just laughed. "See, furball? They never learn. They're like flies after sugar." But then an explosion shook the ship. One of the Falcon's wings was hit, the shield flickered, and the ship responded with a metallic screech that made both of them exchange a moment of silence. Han didn't waste time. He adjusted the course to steer away from the fighters, but something unusual caught his eye. Ahead, space seemed to fold, like a shimmering, liquid veil, forming some kind of glowing rift. The stars around it distorted, as if time and space themselves were being pulled into the opening. "But what is that?" he muttered. Chewbacca roared in protest, but Han, with his usual sarcasm, shot back. "It's this or getting blown to bits out here. Hold on, buddy." The Falcon shuddered, diving into the unknown. The passage felt like flying through an electric storm. Interior lights flickered, strange sounds echoed, and for a moment Han swore he heard voices whispering in languages he didn't recognize. Chewie roared, struggling to keep his balance, as the cockpit spun in all directions. Time itself felt elastic. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, suddenly, the glare ceased, and the sky before them was completely different. Instead of scattered stars, thousands of ships crossed aerial lanes above gleaming skyscrapers. Coruscant, but not the Coruscant they knew from the time of Civil War. This was a more vibrant, pulsing city, with crowded air corridors, organized patrols, and among it all, the intact silhouette of the Jedi temple gleaming on the horizon. Han's eyes widened, and he let out a disbelieving laugh. "You gotta be kidding me, Chewie. Since when did this place look like that? Some kind of galactic convention?" The Wookiee answered with a confused roar. The pair looked on in disbelief at the dwellers below, crossing open passages, as if it were normal to see Jedi everywhere in this place that would one day be the cradle of the Empire at its height. As they nervously laughed at what they were seeing, the Falcon began coughing out metallic groans. The console displayed critical failures. The earlier hit had compromised the systems. Han sighed, still keeping his humor. "Perfect. Now she decides to throw a tantrum. We need to find a quiet spot to fix this." But there was no time. Republic sensors detected the unregistered ship in the aerial lanes, and soon an official message echoed through the communicator. "Unidentified vessel, shut down your engines and prepare for inspection." Han just laughed, cutting off the transmission. "Inspection? Only after my nap." Within seconds, Republic starfighters appeared on the flanks, flying in perfect formation. The difference was clear. These weren't noisy TIEs, but sleek, organized ships with trained pilots. The chase was on. Blue bolts zipped dangerously close to the Falcon. Han barked quick remarks as he dodged with mastery. "They think they can catch me mid-flight? Bet 10 credits I quit before that happens." Chewbacca howled, pointing to the red alarms flashing on the panel. I know. Just one more tight turn." Han replied, almost amused. The chase became a spectacle. The Falcon dove between massive towers, slid through packed aerial lanes, and sent civilian ships scattering in disarray. "Sorry, folks. Wrong parking spot." Han shouted to no one in particular. The Wookiee roared anxiously, but didn't stop managing the secondary systems to ease the overload. With each maneuver, Han showed why he was called the best pilot in the galaxy. Dodging by millimeters, tricking his pursuers, and laughing with sarcasm even under heavy fire. But the Falcon was no longer responding as before. The maneuvers had strained her engines too far. and a deep vibration overtook the ship. Suddenly, the controls locked up. Han cursed under his breath, trying to pull them out of the fall. "You gotta be kidding me." Just when I was starting to have fun. With effort, he managed an emergency landing on an isolated platform. The landing was clumsy, sparks flying and metal groaning. The ship lay motionless, exhausted, as if it too had been through a war. Before they could react, a troop of clones surrounded the Falcon. White armor gleamed under Coruscant's golden light. Han slowly raised his hands, muttering, "Well, at least they didn't shoot first." Chewie growled defiantly but followed his friend's lead. At first, they thought these were ordinary stormtroopers, but on closer look, they realized something was off. Stepping outside their ship and seeing the environment more clearly, they began to understand what was happening. Han gave Chewie a look and told him to stay quiet until he thought of something. Both were escorted toward the Jedi Temple, drawing curious stares from Padawans and knights who had never seen anything like that ship. As they entered the temple's halls, Han fell silent for a few moments. The grandeur of the place, the glowing stained glass, the apprentices in meditation, it all felt out of place to him. "Wow, Luke never mentioned this being so touristy," he muttered, half awestruck. Chewie gave a mocking grunt. Han, as always, shot back, "Don't look at me like that. I just did the flying." The time travel thing was all on the ship. In the council chamber, the mood was solemn. Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, and Anakin Skywalker were present, analyzing the newcomers. Han looked around and saw each one with a lightsaber at their side. He realized they were all Jedi. Trying to mask his nerves with irony, he turned to Chewie and quipped, "Hey Chewie, wasn't Luke Skywalker the last Jedi?" The name echoed through the room, putting the masters on alert. Windu frowned. "Skywalker? What do you know of that name?" Obi-Wan eyed him suspiciously, while Anakin leaned forward, intrigued. Han let out a nervous laugh, shrugging, "Oh, great. So you guys know that surname too." And here I thought I was going crazy. The silence hung heavy for a moment, before Mace stepped forward, his gaze severe. "From what we've learned about your ship, I believe neither of you belongs here. This vessel isn't registered. That model has no record anywhere. You'd better start talking. We will find out how you got here." Han took a deep breath, still clinging to his mocking demeanor. But deep down, he knew something much bigger had just begun again. The interrogation began under a heavy atmosphere. Han Solo was seated in a chair in the middle of the chamber where only the council masters usually sat, with Chewbacca by his side, roaring and speaking in a language only Han could interpret. The council masters exchanged glances, clearly bothered by the fact that they could not understand a single word of the Wookiee dialect. Ki-Adi-Mundi muttered something about calling the Great Master, who could decipher it. But until he arrived, all they heard was Chewie's guttural, incomprehensible sounds. Han, of course, seemed to be greatly amused by the scene. "You don't speak Wookiee? That explains a lot. I bet you also can't cook anything decent without a droid around. I hope you're treating my ship very well." Mace Windu was the first to intervene, his stern expression contrasting with Han's irreverence. "You entered Coruscant without authorization, in an unregistered ship, putting civilians at risk. Do not expect clemency." Han smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Never tell me the odds. I've gotten out of worse. Besides, I get the impression you're not the type that smiles much. Right?" Windu narrowed his eyes, his voice heavy with authority. "Take this seriously. This isn't some random cantina." Han replied without missing a beat. "I've got a bad feeling about this." Chewbacca then roared loudly, drawing everyone's attention. Han, as always, acted as the improvised interpreter. "He says you've got a lot of nerve walking around in those robes without carrying blasters. And honestly, I agree." The Wookiee growled in confirmation, drawing confused looks from the masters. Plo Koon tilted his head, intrigued by the way Han translated with so much sarcasm. Han himself chuckled and added, "You should listen to him more often. He's got good ideas." Han seemed calm on the outside, but he had already noticed all the lightsabers and understood the situation. The tension rose when Chewbacca pointed his claw at Obi-Wan. He roared something longer, filled with emotion. Han widened his eyes. Wait, he says he knows you. Kenobi, right? You got a relative named Ben Kenobi. The silence in the room intensified. Obi-Wan responded calmly, simply, I am Obi-Wan Kenobi. Han blinked, and the realization hit him. Oh, so you're the guy himself. You're gonna age real bad, my friend. Obi-Wan merely raised an eyebrow, clearly not understanding the comment, while Anakin cracked an involuntary smile. That was when the young Skywalker joined the conversation. Why did you mention that surname with such familiarity? Han took a deep breath, trying to act natural. Skywalker, huh? You know, I've got a girlfriend waiting for me, and she'd be really mad if I didn't show up. Princesses don't like to be kept waiting. The mention drew serious looks from the Jedi, and then Han realized, with a cold chill running through his body. Leia. Leia Organa was Anakin Skywalker's daughter. He was standing before his father-in-law in his younger version. Han was silent for a few seconds, trying to swallow the irony of the situation. Then, as always, he disguised it with sarcasm. Kid, you have no idea what your daughter is going to put me through. The comment left the masters perplexed, but Han didn't care. He was more worried about not getting lost in the tangle of paradoxes his own mouth had just created. The atmosphere remained tense until an announcement echoed through the halls. The Grand Master Yoda was on his way. The environment shifted when Yoda entered. His step was slow, but it carried an immense aura. Han, for the first time, fell silent at the presence of the small master. Chewbacca, however, was overcome with emotion. He roared loudly, almost like an ancient call, and ran to Yoda. The master lifted his gaze and broke into a rare smile. Ah, Chewbacca, just the same you are. Only a few years older, it seems. The Wookiee bowed emotionally, and in that moment everyone understood that these travelers weren't lying. They were from the future. Yoda walked to the center of the room, leaning on his cane, and spoke in his unmistakable way. From the future you come. In the past, now you are. The flow of the Force, distorted it has been. His half-closed eyes conveyed the weight of the revelation. Han crossed his arms, shaking his head. Great. I knew this wasn't some simple hyperspace shortcut. But inside, even he felt the weight of that confirmation. With a calm voice, Yoda revealed ancient knowledge of the Force. He unveiled that temporal cycles exist. Portals, sometimes, open. Perhaps, there may be a way for them to return. Han arched an eyebrow. Ironic. Good to know. I've got commitments. And a missed dinner with my girlfriend. The master, unfazed, continued. Meditate. I must. The path we will find. Study the codes, you will wait. Understand the flow, that is what we will do now. The Jedi exchanged looks, impressed by the clarity of the master about something so extraordinary. Yoda then raised his hand, decreeing the decision. Kenobi and Skywalker, care for them you will. Until they return to their time, your responsibility they are. Obi-Wan and Anakin exchanged silent glances, still not fully grasping what had happened. But they accepted the order. Han raised his eyebrows, looking at both of them. Wonderful. I'm in good hands, or maybe not. Let's go. Father-in-law. I mean, Skywalker. Chewie grumbled in agreement, clearly still uneasy with the situation. When the council began to disperse, Mace Windu approached Yoda, his voice low but firm. Are you certain, Master? Leaving them in the care of those two may bring problems or unpredictable consequences. Yoda closed his eyes for a moment, leaning on his cane, before replying. Certain, I am. Precious information about the future, they will reveal. Useful, very useful it will be. The answer was definitive, ending any contestation. Han watched everything, with a tired half-smile. He knew he was caught in a game far bigger than he could control. But, true to his nature, he showed no fear. He only cast a look at Chewbacca and muttered, Well, partner. Looks like the adventure's just beginning. The Wookiee's deep roar answered as always, confirming that, no matter how strange this time was, they were still together, and that was enough. Han Solo and Chewbacca, although officially watched, were not locked in cells. Obi-Wan and Anakin were given the task of guiding them through Coruscant while Yoda and the other masters dedicated themselves to the investigations. Han, as expected, did not cooperate at all. He made jokes about the city's architecture, grumbled about the air traffic, and constantly poked at Anakin with sharp comments. "You're really tense, father-in-law. Ever thought about smiling once in a while?" The young Skywalker narrowed his eyes and furrowed his brow, irritated, and Obi-Wan had to intervene at every corner to keep the rivalry from turning into conflict. The perfect opportunity for Han to show his side came when they decided to stop at a local cantina. "Now this, finally, something worthwhile on this sightseeing trip," he exclaimed, entering and ordering a round of drinks. Chewbacca roared in excitement, while Anakin remained serious, arms crossed. Obi-Wan only sighed, knowing this would be trouble. Han quickly began interacting with merchants, gamblers, and even the musicians there, as if he were at home. For him, bars were sacred territory. It was there that the situation became explosive. Padme Amidala entered, accompanied by guards and a few senators. Han, upon seeing her, was completely impressed. "Now I get why this planet still works. With a senator like that, even I'd become a politician." Without ceremony, he walked up to her, leaned in and said, "If you ever need someone to pilot your personal ship, I'm the best in the galaxy. Ask the Wookiee." Chewie roared in support, drawing laughter from those around. Anakin, on the other hand, nearly leapt from his chair, his face filled with fury at seeing Han daring to approach Padme. "Stay away from her," he shouted, reaching for his lightsaber. Obi-Wan acted quickly, firmly grabbing the apprentice's arm. "Patience, Anakin. Not every smuggler deserves your wrath." Han raised his eyebrows, amused. "Hey, easy there, kid. I was just being polite. And frankly, if she weren't taken, I'd stand a real chance." Padme, ever elegant, only smiled politely, without giving him any attention. While these personality clashes unfolded, the Jedi Council advanced in their investigations. The data obtained at the Falcon's appearance, combined with Force readings, revealed something abnormal. Waves of energy, previously imperceptible, now echoed across Coruscant like invisible scars. Secret archives indicated hidden experiments being carried out by shadowy figures in the Senate. The hypothesis grew stronger. The time rift was no accident, but the result of Force manipulations no one should ever dare attempt. One afternoon, Han and Chewbacca, repairing the Falcon systems in a temple hangar, overheard the conversation by chance. Obi-Wan was reporting the discovery. "Senators are using hidden resources to toy with powers they do not understand." Han looked at Chewie and couldn't resist. Politicians messing with powers they don't understand. That never ends well. The Wookiee roared in approval and Han added with irony, "First come the speeches, then come the wars." Soon after, when it was mentioned that the anomalies were coming from laboratories tied to the Senate, Han threw out the line in an anticlimactic, almost bored tone. "Come on, it's Palpatine. I could have told you that 5 parsecs ago." Silence filled the room. Jedi of all ranks stared at him as if he had just revealed a forbidden secret. Obi-Wan was the first to speak. "How dare you speak the Supreme Chancellor's name like that?" Han crossed his arms, sighing. "Look, I didn't want to be the one to ruin the party, but you need to know. That guy is going to become the greatest villain in the galaxy. The Empire? He'll create it. The title of Emperor? He'll take it. And if you think I'm making this up, just ask the big guy here." Chewbacca roared loudly, confirming. Han then, in a tone more serious than usual, revealed everything he knew. How Palpatine would become Darth Sidious, how the Republic would fall, and how a certain Lord Vader would be the iron fist of that regime. The Jedi were left speechless and soon carried the information to the masters present in the Jedi Council. Mace Windu frowned, absorbing every word. This knowledge, if it's true, changes everything. Anakin, for his part, seemed disturbed, but did not yet understand the weight of the revelations. Han concluded, "You're looking in all the wrong places. The enemy is already sitting in the highest chair, and if you don't act, you'll regret it." Obi-Wan exchanged a grave look with the others. Plo Koon nodded silently, while Ki-Adi-Mundi muttered about taking the information to the full council. Without delay, the Jedi decided to act. Han and Chewie, by their order, remained in the hangar, finishing repairs on the Falcon, which was already nearly ready. Han just shrugged. Sure, run along and do something. I just hope you believe it before it's too late. When the Jedi hurried away, Han leaned against one of the ship's wings, wiping grease from his hands. He looked at Chewie and commented with a tired half-smile. You know, partner, never thought I'd end up trying to save the galaxy. Definitely, something went wrong in this jump. The Wookiee answered with a low roar, and for the first time, Han didn't respond with sarcasm. He just remained silent, staring at Coruscant's golden horizon, knowing that the revelations he had just dropped would change everything. The approach was carried out in a calculated way, with a select group of Jedi Masters and an elite guard of the Republic. Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Plo Koon led the front, while other knights and soldiers positioned themselves at strategic points around the Senate. The objective was simple but risky: to observe Palpatine closely and uncover the truth. The Chancellor always walked flanked by Red Guards, imposing, who moved like shadows around him. The entourage was impeccable, but the tension in the air made it clear that something was about to explode. The first approach came from Mace Windu, his firm voice echoing through the Senate's luxurious corridors. Chancellor Palpatine, we need answers about illegal experiments involving the Force and temporal distortions. Palpatine smiled, that flawless political mask, but his eyes glimmered with something the Jedi recognized: darkness. Gentlemen, always so ready to suspect the guardian of peace. Is the Force itself not the most dangerous of weapons, if used without wisdom? As he spoke, his hands moved discreetly under his cloak, summoning something hidden. It was then that the disguise fell. Palpatine pulled a device similar to a saber from his robes and activated it. At that very moment, hundreds of portals began to appear across Coruscant, some even inside the chamber, revealing an army ready to attack. Guards became relentless warriors, revealing training far beyond the ordinary. Droids emerged from hidden panels, armed to the teeth, and the very floor of the Senate opened up, revealing structures forged for war. At the same time, in the skies of Coruscant, a temporal rift gleamed like a burning scar, spewing out soldiers and starfighters from different eras. Ships from the future, mixed with frigates of the Republic itself, emerged in absolute chaos. Time had shattered. Inside the Senate, the fight began violently. Jedi who were already prepared for a possible escape were caught off guard by the portals, but quickly reorganized and ignited lightsabers in all directions, facing endless waves of corrupted droids that advanced without pause. Hidden traps fired electric bolts and energy barriers, forcing Anakin and Obi-Wan to defend themselves with acrobatic jumps. Mace advanced like a wall, repelling enemies with his purple blade in flawless movements. Yoda, in his impressive agility, leapt between columns, taking down enemies with quick, devastating strikes. In the center of the chamber, Palpatine finally revealed himself. His political smile gave way to a grim expression as a red lightsaber ignited in his hand. Then, Force lightning shot from his fingers, hitting 3 Jedi at once, hurling them against the walls. He spun with supernatural speed, slicing through a column and using the debris as projectiles against Obi-Wan, who only managed to deflect part of them. In another sudden move, the Chancellor leapt over Mace and struck with violence, forcing the Master to retreat. Anakin charged, his blue saber blazing, but Palpatine blocked with monstrous precision, counterattacking with a combination of strikes that resembled more a macabre dance. Then the Sith spun and struck the floor, unleashing a wave of energy that caused several Jedi to lose their balance. His final move was to raise his hands and summon lightning that spread across the ceiling, blowing apart parts of the Senate structure. Outside, the chaos grew. Ships crossed through portals, soldiers from different eras clashed, and all of Coruscant seemed to collapse. Meanwhile, at a nearby spaceport, Han and Chewbacca watched the battle spreading across the horizon in disbelief. Han shook his head and let out his classic irony. "Let's get out of here. This mess isn't ours. Let's scram before these guys decide to find us." Chewie roared in agreement. Inside the Senate, the battle reached its peak. Palpatine managed to open a new rift, trying to escape through it. Anakin tried to intercept him but was hurled against a column with a violent kick. Obi-Wan advanced right after, but was struck by a bolt of Force lightning that knocked him to the ground. Mace Windu was dueling directly with Palpatine, their sabers clashing in flashes that lit up the chamber, but the Sith, with cunning, tricked him with a feint and fled through the corridors toward a secret hangar. Yoda was the one who managed to sever the Emperor's arm, and now, wounded, he saw no choice but to flee with his pain. Yoda watched the enemy running and stopped only to seize the portal device that had fallen along with Palpatine's severed arm. Those were the seconds the Chancellor needed to run in search of an escape ship. The Sith slipped away and destroyed the routes until he reached a ship and quickly departed. With a face of frustration and pain, but knowing he would have another chance to destroy the Jedi in the future. But then something happened. With a precise shot, the cannon struck Palpatine's ship squarely. There was a blinding explosion, and what remained of the self-proclaimed Lord of the Sith vanished in a ball of fire. Han Solo celebrated and said his Wookiee friend's aim was as sharp as ever, and that the credit was all his. "I just gave a little help, my dear Chewie." In the ruined Senate, Jedi and Republic guards celebrated their survival. Yoda and Mace Windu discussed the artifact Palpatine had used to open the temporal rifts. The ancient master lifted the object and, with a grave voice, declared, "Close it we must. Balance restore we need." Mace nodded, understanding the importance of sealing the breaches in the fabric of time. Then, a message was sent to Han. The location of the fissure that would return them to their era had been identified. Han received the communication and smirked. "Well, time to get back to my princess." The ship, despite its damage, responded as it always did under his skilled hands. Chewie roared, preparing the systems for the jump. From above, Coruscant burned in battles and smoke, but it also shone with the hope of a future that, now, perhaps could be different. The Millennium Falcon accelerated toward the rift, leaving behind Jedi Masters who silently waved in farewell. Han raised his hand in an ironic gesture of goodbye, but in his eyes there was respect. The fissure gleamed like a convulsing sun, swallowing the ship in a flash. And then, in an instant, they were gone. Only the void remained, and the promise that, despite paradoxes and wars, there were still paths of hope in the galaxy.